and confidence. We welcome you, Dr. Koehn.
What a huge privilege to be here. What a joy to be here. Many years ago, well, about 16 years ago, maybe a little less because I'm aging as we speak and I'm going to collapse time into younger moments, I took up horseback riding when I was like 42, and I was riding with 5-year-olds and then 7-year-olds and then 9-year-olds and then the luminous young women that you see around us here. And my trainer said to me after a good round in the ring, or particularly challenging moment that my horse and I had worked through, she said, now pat your horse and now pat yourself. So this is a moment when we can all pat ourselves and pat all the extraordinary, and when I say horses, I mean it with more honor and respect than you can possibly imagine. A big round of applause for the graduates of 2019. This day is a joyous occasion, particularly for the proud and loving people on this side of the dais. It is also called commencement, which I always think is a very interesting word because it's joyous and it's bittersweet. It is an extraordinary achievement, and it's a jumping off point or crossroads. It is a beginning and it's an ending. T.S. Eliot once wrote in a wonderful set of poems called The Four Quartets, and this is from Little Gidding, one of those poems, what we call the beginning is often the end, and to make an end is to make a beginning. It turns out, as all of you know and will learn in even greater measure going forward, that our lives are made up of such crossroads. Some are planned, some are not. In 2017, as Sister Rogers was kind enough to acknowledge, I published a book called Forged in Crisis. It had taken me 15 years, so it was a long pregnancy, my friends, and more than time for the baby, the book, to come into the world. And it's a story, and the reason it took me so long is because these extraordinarily human stories of these 5 people. Ernest Shackleton, the Antarctic explorer, Abraham Lincoln, the abolitionist, escaped slave, Frederick Douglass, the less well-known but extraordinarily interesting and honorable man named Dietrich Bonhoeffer, who was a Nazi resistor in Berlin through the 30s and early 40s. And then last but not least, my dear friends here at Newton Country Day School, Rachel Carson. If you don't know who she is, you need to not pass go or collect $200, but discover this woman who was of great grace and shyness and softness and was one of the most important readers in the last 100 years, in any place and any context. And the book is about how each of these ordinary people made themselves capable of doing extraordinary things. How do we make the impossible possible? And how do we make ourselves ready, able to do that when we are called to such engaging, compelling, hard, and satisfying work? And it turns out, and I learned this in my own life and I learned this in this book, that the way they did this began with one critical decision on their parts. It was a decision, my friends, to work on themselves as a great project in their lives. To work on themselves, to make ourselves stronger and more luminous and more loving and more serious and more ready for the worthy, mighty purpose that is coming your way and that you will all discover if we can look up and out of our iPhones long enough to discover that as important as these objects are, there's much more going on for our best selves, for our character and our competence. So the making begins with working on ourselves. It also becomes the most satisfying, the most challenging, the most grounding and powerful work you will ever do. But you have to decide that it's going to be part of who you are. Now, here's the really interesting thing. The bulk of this making, of getting themselves stronger and more luminous and more worthy and more powerful, in again, the honorable way, occurred during a crisis. It occurred during one of these unplanned crossroads, when they didn't know what was going to happen, and when Each of these people, as we all are faced more than once with encounters of doubt, self-doubt, failure, disappointment, calamity. It is in these moments that each of these people made an important decision again. And the decision was this, and many people in this, particularly on this side of the dais, but many of you as well, I'd say that with great respect and great joy, discover, which is that we don't always have very good control over the large events of our life, over what happens to us. But we do have control over how we respond to it, the lens we put in the camera of our life on ourselves and what we're to do next, even when we're down on our knees and really, really uncertain how to get out. We have a choice. And each of these people took that choice and decided to get better and stronger, to make something good in the alchemy of which all crises have potential, make something good from their encounters with difficulty. So we get to choose that. Now, I think, someone asked me, why did I write this book? I thought I wrote the book because I'm a historian and I teach leadership at Harvard Business School and we can learn from history and all those logical things. But I think now, finishing it, I wrote the book, Forged in Crisis, because at the time I began the book, and I didn't know I was beginning the book, I was just up all night because my life was falling apart. I started reading about Mr. Lincoln. I didn't know anything about Lincoln. I was trained as an European historian. And I started reading, this is in the cold, terrible months of February of 2003. My father had just dropped dead. My husband of 15 years had just walked out, complete surprise. I was going to get a job. Turned out to be an extraordinary moment of great liberation, but I didn't know that at the time. I was just on my knees and lost 20 pounds in 20 days. And then I would get cancer quickly after that, even though I had no risk factors. And then I would have a terrible divorce, and then I would get cancer again. So it was just a wee bit of difficulty in 5 years. And so suddenly, and I was taken off the fast track at HBS because I was too sick and too busy with crises to be on the track to be a dean or an associate dean, etc. And so I started reading late at night because I wasn't sleeping. And I ended up reading Lincoln's speeches, reading backwards into time. And one night I woke up and I said, I was inside of the bed, my spaniels were on the bed, and I said, Miss Nancy, you think you have problems? Mr. Lincoln had it worse. And so I ended up writing a book about 5 people who could teach me how to get better and stronger, not smaller, not more bitter, not more angry, how I could get more luminous and useful and connected to other people in the right way. And so I owe great debt to these people. So, last, perhaps most traditional part of the commencement speech or the commencement remarks, here's what I've learned. Okay, so here's what I've learned from these 5 people and many others. I teach a course on the history of leadership and people making as leaders. Here are the things that have been so important to me. First, resolve that you're going to make something very good of your most difficult moments. Resolve. Shake your hand at the sky and say, I will not get smaller and more brittle. That's your choice. Second, begin within. All really luminous, exciting, powerful, meaningful, benevolent transformation or character and courage happens first within ourselves, and then from that place, reaching out into the world. Third, we strengthen our muscles of courage. I say this with pride at school, where that's part of your motto. We strengthen our muscles of courage not by eliminating fear, not by smashing it into a little box or getting an app on our iPhone that says, end fear in your life. We find courage by moving into fear, by taking the first step into the uncertainty. I'm going to go on Boston Public Radio an hour and talk about Harriet Tubman, the escaped slave, an extraordinary conductor on the Underground Railroad, later a suffragette, huge activist for women's rights. And all of her early life is defined by fear and her continuing to walk in one step at a time to her own anxiety and discovering in the process that each step you take strips away the varnish of fear inside you and allows you to take the next step and then the next. And that your ability to do that helps other people do it. So we strengthen our muscles of courage and moral courage by moving into the fear. Fourth, don't stop looking for your mighty purpose. Embrace it. Today's the 75th anniversary of D-Day, my friends. And those men on the beaches of all kinds of nationalities that were fighting Nazi Germany had a purpose. It was a serious purpose. It was an honorable purpose. It was a purpose of goodness. And they were emboldened, and we honor them today for the embrace of that purpose. Number 5, trust in the force of goodness. In an age which is not spending a lot of time in the public spheres talking about goodness, trust in it. Move the boulder of goodness forward. Believe in compassion and decency and dignity and honor and care and character and competence. It's there and waiting for you folks to be shining flames of it. 6, discover the sustaining power and grace of connecting with others and helping them. One of the interesting things I've learned, you folks know it already because you're smarter and much more accomplished than I was, and probably than I am in some respects, even though I'm logging a lot more years on you. One of the things we discover is that when we're feeling really lousy about our lives and ourselves, and someone asks us for help, we suddenly discover something very exciting and good in ourselves and in our lives by offering that. 7, this is going to sound terribly old-fashioned and out of sorts for this moment. When you go to school next year, or you go on to the next leg of your journey, invest in your mind. I was from a middle-class family in the Midwest. I had no one in my high school ever gone anywhere but the University of Illinois or Illinois State University. And I went to Stanford, and I was in way over my head. And all I said is invest in your mind. And I worked really hard to nurture and motivate and expand my mind, and it pays me off every single day as I live with myself and live in the world. Your mind is more important than this age would have you indicate. Last, never give up, never give up, never give up, never give up. The world needs your leadership and all your gifts and all your talents and all your stronger selves more than it's ever needed any batch of graduates. I know you've heard that. I know it's exhausting to hear it. It remains true. And you must rise to the challenge as you will and discover your place and your purpose. You know, David Foster Wallace, who gave, I think, one of the best commencement addresses in the history of the genre many, many years ago at Kenyon State, ended his address by saying, "I wish you way more than luck." And I just stole that and said, I wish you laughter, light, love, and lots of luck. Thank you.